Peter Block here in Orlando at the American Heart Association annual meetings for On the Scene. With me is Carolyn Ho from Brigham and Women's Hospital in my old hometown, Boston. So Carolyn has done an interesting study going rather basically back to genes and all that kind of stuff. So Carolyn, I'm going to ask you to talk about what you did in your study to start with, because it does have some clinical effects.
Yeah. So the study really was to try to aggregate as big a patient database and registry as possible in patients that have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So what we've learned about this condition over the years is that it's not that common and the event rates are low. And so no single center on its own is going to be able to acquire the necessary amount of patient experience to really crack some of the important questions about why some people do well and why others don't do well and suffer sudden death or refractory heart failure. So,
okay, let me interrupt and say, how did you get all these patients?
So we tried to take advantage of the friends and family strategy, where we reached out to colleagues that we've had productive working relationships with in the past and who have all been keeping their own institutional databases of their HCM patients tracked over time. And so with our initial 10 founding sites, we've been able to accrue together over 5,600 patients with HCM, more than half of whom have had genetic testing. And because of we've been able to track data longitudinally, each site maintaining its own database, we have over 125,000 patient years of experience to build from. So I think that with that type of scale, we can really start to get more precise estimates of risk and more quantitative descriptions of the population in general.
Okay, and you've identified some sarcomere abnormalities here that may have some clinical significance. Tell me what you found.
Right, so sarcomere genes have been known to be the cause of HCM for about a quarter century now, but we still haven't really been able to figure out how genetics actually impacts disease and prognosis. We know it causes disease, but what is it that makes one person with one mutation do better than one person, even with that same mutation or with a different mutation? So we initially broke patients down to whether or not they had a sarcomere gene identified or whether they had negative genetic testing results. And we found that in that situation, genetics does matter. Genetics matters because the patients with HCM and sarcomere mutations had worse overall outcomes than patients that had HCM but no identifiable sarcomere mutation.
Okay, so let's switch to the clinical side of this. As we were talking before the interview, we were talking about arrhythmias as being identified, that you could in fact identify patients more likely. That clearly is a clinical outcome that you might change your strategy. Tell me what else you found that may be important here.
Well, I think we're still digging deeper and trying to find everything. Again, sarcomere mutation carriers have worse outcomes across the board. We're starting to explore the very rare subset of patients that have multiple mutations. So in a single individual that harbors more than one sarcomere mutation, those patients probably do worse, but the devil's in the details, right? We need to figure out, why they do worse. It's probably worse if you have, one mutation inherited from mom and one mutation inherited from dad, so you have absolutely no normal protein, versus having a mutation in the same gene occurring on the same chromosome, so you have a counterbalancing normal allele. So I think those types of things we'll be able to start to do as we accrue more patients, and those patients seem to have higher arrhythmic risk than other patients. So
from the very sort of nuts and bolts clinical standpoint, Carolyn, if you can identify a patient who, for example, is going to have a ventricular arrhythmia, you might go earlier with an ICD or something like that. Right. Much more to come, obviously, from this large subset of patients, but an exciting area that you're going to do a lot of detail work on.
All right, we're looking forward to what we can learn in the future.
Thanks for coming by.